Thank you very much for being with me for this session. I am Dr. Sikandar. My background is general surgery and I'm in quality and safety for a couple of years. I am going to present patient safety framework. It's a joint venture between me and Mrs. Marianne. Mrs. Marianne is a senior IHI consultant. I don't have any kind of conflict of interest to declare in context of this presentation, so nothing to declare, right? I have got certain objectives from this session, and I do hope that after completion of the session you will be able to list the components of the patient safety framework, use the framework as a roadmap to guide you in applying the principles included here, or as a diagnostic tool to determine how well you are pursuing the different components of the framework in your workplace. Means you will use the concept described in this framework, and you should also use this framework as a tool to evaluate your organization current patient safety system, right? Uh, a group of subject matter experts at the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, along with people from Safe and Reliable Healthcare, they collaborated together for 15 years to develop this framework. And uh, in today's healthcare environment is that the systems that support patient care are complex and error prone, and most organizations lack a comprehensive method for making them less so. So this framework for safe, reliable and effective care is designed to guide organization on their journey. Okay. And you can see two foundational components: culture and learning system, and there are 9 components, and in the center is engagement of patient and family. Uh, and if you focus on the picture, you will see that all the components are interrelated and interdependent. So success made in one part of the component will ultimately has an impact on the other part. Another picture that shows you the descriptive details for the components. As I said earlier, I will be discussing the culture domains and one shared component, leadership, that falls within both the domains. The culture domain, they are psychological safety, accountability, teamwork and communication, followed by negotiation. But before that, I will describe you in brief about leadership. The primary function of leadership in healthcare is to influence their followers to develop behaviors, habits, processes, and technologies that result in outstanding, ever improving performance. So, what do you mean by behaviors? You know, leadership has been defined in many ways. Develop behavior means bring those actions that consistently ask you to be committed to standardized processes supported by technologies to give outstanding product and services. Leaders may have many responsibilities, such as guarding the learning system, create a safe and just culture where staff are psychologically safe, foster trust, and align values of individual and group with the organization. The culture, uh, we have a few definitions of the culture that has been displayed in this slide. Uh, what the individual and group values, how their competencies are reflected in behaviors, they altogether play an important role in building a learning system. You know, every organization has a particular workplace environment which is consciously or subconsciously shaped by personalities, values and behaviors of the people working and leading it. Uh, and to understand the impact of culture on patient safety issue, just have a look on the picture on your right side. The tip of the iceberg shows the way we want things done, and the submerged part tells about how the things are actually being done. For improvement in every field, we need to focus on the submerged cultural issue. What are those cultural issues? You will find that many of your uh, staffs, colleagues will be talking things like that. We have always done it that way. We are different. Don't set the bar so high that won't work here and so on. So don't get distracted from these negative attitudes. And as a leader, and if you're planning to make your organization more safer place, you should try to remove these cultural barriers. In this slide, I am going to talk about one of the very important components of the cultural domain, that is psychological safety. According to Amy Edmondson, who is a professor at Harvard Business School, she defines psychological safety as a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, right? Now, I want to know your definition of psychological safety, because you are working in a healthcare system and you must have come across so many instances where you must have felt that you need psychological protection. From my point of view, psychological safety is a condition where a staff, patient, and family feels free to raise concerns and make suggestions and ideas without being questioned or punished. Now, to put more stress on psychological safety, I'm going to talk about a study that has been conducted by Google in 2015. After the study, Google published the results of a two-year study into what makes a great team. Can you guess what makes a great team? Okay. The interesting thing was that the answer was not those with the most senior people, with the highest IQs, or even those that made least amount of mistakes. Then what were those five keys? So based on the findings of Google, develop a list of five keys dynamics that make great teams successful. And they are psychological safety, dependability, structure and clarity, meaning, impact. While all five were necessary to create a successful team, psychological safety stood out as the most important factor. But in real life, the scenario is different. Uh, we see that in our workplace, in our social life, psychological safety is not supported. Instead of encouraging people to ask more questions, going for feedback, uh, we have, in fact, a negative attitude, uh, and we don't encourage these qualities in people. Now the question is how the organization is going to promote a psychological safety culture in the organization. First of all, the organization should lay the groundwork for psychological safety. Uh, Organizations need to clearly convey to all staff and leaders that it is an expectation, right? And then they have to take following actions to promote how people will get involved with psychological safety. Uh, Managers from the organization should meet individually with the people who report to them at least 10 minutes per month. It has been advised by IHI, and asks following questions. For example, what is working well, what is not working well, how I am doing in managing the environment, who are the people that we should be highlighting for excellent work, what important suggestion do you have, and the leadership should be very careful that whatever the concerns and issues has been raised with patient families or the staff must be answered, because if they don't get the feedback, after some time the people lose the habit of reporting issues or making suggestion. And other important things are conducting regular huddles and brief meeting with groups. Now coming to another important component of cultural domain, that is accountability. So what do you mean by accountability? Accountability means people are held responsible for their actions, but according to this paper, a very nice definition, people to account for their actions but not for flaws in the process or system. If something goes wrong in the system or the process, people should not be held accountable, because you know that 80% of the preventable harms that occurs in healthcare systems are due to errors in the system. So for those errors, people should not be held accountable. But everyone is accountable as a team member. When you are working as a team, you should be held accountable. You should be committed. You should know how to self-manage. You should be competent enough and courageous. What do you mean by courageous? Means you should have extra power, extra strength? No, it doesn't mean that one. Courageous means when you find that there is a potential risk or something grievous harm is going to happen, and even if the person in front of uh, is of a high ranking, you should make him alert that something is going to harm the patient. That's a courageous attitude, and that should be one of the characteristic of a team member. And in return, organization has also many obligation. The organization is accountable for treating individuals fairly and justly when things go wrong. Means they should do a root cause analysis and find out what went wrong, because in most instances it is the system or the process failure that is responsible for error, right? As an organization, uh, there are so many accountability algorithms available for use. The best known are just culture algorithm and the incidence decision tree. Uh, Organizations are free to choose any of them, but they should clearly communicate with their staff, with their people, that they must follow that algorithm in case if adverse events happen. So when something goes wrong and a patient is harmed, the algorithm uh, says or have advised to ask these questions, uh, like were the actions malicious? Did they intend to cause the harm? Uh, Means when you are evaluating your staffs for accountability, in case something harm has happened, then you have to ask these questions, right? So the question number one, were their action malicious? Did they intend to cause harm? So if it is found that their actions were malicious, so they will be definitely held accountable and will be dealt accordingly. Second question, was their sensorium intact? Were they thinking clearly? Here, uh, in some of the organization, people have been found of substance abusers. So if it has been proved, then the organization will decide what action to be taken for them, right? Where their actions reasonable and appropriate. So in this situation, uh, the organization analyze that in the same circumstances, three people of same qualification would have done the same thing, then it's appropriate. But it doesn't clearly says that the action taken were appropriate if it is done by the three people, right? So in case even if it has been practiced by three people of same qualification, but it is inappropriate, then organization must revise their policy and procedure in consultation uh, with the healthcare professionals, right? The fourth one, where their actions risky, reckless, or unintentional. So again, uh, the process will let the organization know about the actions and intention. And finally, does the individual have history of unsafe behavior? So in this situation, if the persons has been reported repeatedly for such behaviors in these situations, he needs to be uh, sent to another facility, or some harsh decision from the organization could be taken. Now, moving from concept to reality. So, what's the role of organization here? Organization should engage all staff in regular simulations, evaluating cases when things go wrong, at least twice per year. Uh, Convene middle managers to review uh, an example case together, whether real or simulated, using the algorithm which I discussed earlier. After this simulation, middle managers should then review the case in their monthly meetings with the frontline staff, so that everybody is aware on the same page, and they will also know that what type of algorithm is being used throughout the organization. And in doing so, organization can ensure that only one set of rules is used throughout the organization and applied to all equally. Now teamwork and communication, two other important components of culture domain. Um, Failures of teamwork and communication are not simply failures in technical proficiency, causes the majority of medical errors and injuries in hospitals and other healthcare facilities. So that's why it's very important for any organization to focus on teamwork and should have a structured communication uh, within the organization. And other thing, as a team, is the responsibility of the team members to have a shared understanding, and they should anticipate needs and problems and always work on agreed upon methods to manage situations, including conflict resolution between team members. It's also important for us to know the hallmarks of a strong team. For example, plan forward means the team has a proactive approach. They reflect back their learnings, and the learnings could be achieved from day-to-day work, or even mistakes could be taken as new learnings. And they should have a clear-cut communication plan, and they should know how to manage risk. I just want to put more stress here on manage risk. Manage risks in some critical moments. Teams may use a designated word or phrase that indicates there is perceived risk, and what gives the team permission to stop what they are doing and take a stock of the situation. For example, uh, when the general surgeon performing a difficult laparoscopic cholecystectomy has spent 30 minutes ineffectively trying to identify the common bile duct amidst the scar tissue surrounding the gallbladder, and frustration is evident, an experienced circulating nurse or anesthesiologist might suggest to get a second opinion. Now again, moving from concept to reality, what the organization is going to uh, promote good teamwork and communication, right? Senior leaders should periodically enter a work setting and ask and receive answer to the following questions, right? Organization need to set the expectation that middle managers and are responsible for establishing these norms of conducts and team behaviors, right? So, as I said you that senior leaders should periodically enter a work setting and ask and receive answers to the following questions. So what are those following questions? They are: how do you brief a team? What is the process for ensuring that everyone on the team knows the plan? Just for example, surgical checklist. So by doing so, by such leadership involvement, the organization will know how the people are communicating, whether they know what is brief, what is debrief, and that will make communication more structured. Other question like what do you brief? How do you manage the teamworks with team members coming on shift and different hours? And finally, how do you debrief? Because debriefing is very important, because what you heard from the uh, person, you should just reflect back. And there are chances that you may miss some of the important things. That's why debriefing is very important, right? So what activities do you do to do brief? Identify what has worked and what has not. When does this work? So all these question answer session will bring uh, a good communication culture among healthcare professionals. Now I am going to discuss the last components, negotiation and conflict management. I will not go in details because uh, my colleagues will discuss conflict management in detail. So I will be very concise here. Negotiation and conflict management can be defined as gaining genuine agreement on matters of importance of team members, patients, and families. Why negotiation and conflict management is important? The reason is that our healthcare system is complex, uh, and the need to make decisions among a group of smart and passionate people who have different points of view. Organization must find ways to successfully manage conflict and negotiate in pursuit of gaining genuine agreement on matters of importance. Now, these are the different methods of negotiation and conflict management: avoidance, accommodation, competition, compromise, and collaboration. So I will only focused on collaboration. Why? Uh, why? Uh, because healthcare team should commit to using collaborative technique because it yields a workable solution that manage resources, provide the best options for the patients, and preserve the relationship between parties. Now I have done with my part, and at the end you have to just answer these questions on 25th when we are going to having discussion, online discussion session with you. And the questions are: why it is difficult to speak up in a hierarchical environment? How you ever challenge someone who had more authority in a situation than you? How did it go? Why is working in healthcare risky and why it is important? Do you think it is easy or difficult to keep these risks and rewards in mind as you go about daily work of health? Uh, think of leaders with whom you have worked. Which ones made you feel safest and why? So you have to prepare answer for these questions, and we will discuss in detail on 25th in our online session. So I have done here, and now the remaining part of the session will be taken by my colleague Mrs. Marianne. So now it's over to Mrs. Marianne. Mrs. Marianne, now the floor is yours.